From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. A Colombian former high-level official has been found dead in his apartment in Bogotá before he could complete his testimony in the Odebrecht case. Rafael Merchan, the former Secretary for Transparency of the President and a former diplomat, had been set to testify in the Odebrecht case. His testimony was expected to be on the side of Luis Fernando Andrade, the former director of the National Infrastructure Agency, who was accused of using his position to push bids towards construction companies associated with Odebrecht. This is the third strange death linked to this case. Workers' organizations are marching in Quito, Ecuador, against the government's latest economic measures. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has more from the demonstration.
Ecuador's World Unity Front and several social organizations of workers are marching today in Quito against the latest economic measures announced by the government of Lenin Moreno. The Minister of Economy, Richard Martinez, announced a new increase in the price of gasoline. The price of the gasoline it was 1.48 per gallon, and now the new price is 1.85 per gallon. The social organization and the workers are against the latest economic measure. They said that the government is taking neoliberal decisions that affect the Ecuadorians. They also said and they are asking to stop with this measure, and they are asking to President Lenin Moreno to start thinking in the Ecuadorian families. According to the Minister of Economy, Richard Martinez, this new increase is part of an optimization of the state process led by the Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno. However, the organization said that if they can talk with President Lenin Moreno, they will continue with this struggle to defend their rights and to stop with these economic measures.
We thank Denise Herrera for that report. The Inter-Ethnic Association for the Development of the Peruvian Forest has presented its first report on the situation facing isolated indigenous communities in Peru. One of the report's main points are the ongoing threats and disrespect from the state with respect to the laws that are supposed to protect these communities.
Indigenous leaders from the Peruvian Amazon have expressed serious concerns about the future of uncontacted tribes in the region. In a detailed report, they raise alarms that mining and deforestation increasingly enter with the territories of isolated Amazonian tribes.
This is a serious threat to their lives, to the health of these people. We are telling the Peruvian government to issue a law that will ensure their protection and that indigenous reserves are out of bounds. They can no longer support investments in extractivist industries or any other types of development projects that will harm these areas.
Amazonian organizations have been waiting for 20 years for the state to review its proposals on the recognition of indigenous reserves in isolation. Meanwhile, they have been doing the job that is supposed to be the government's.
The burden falls mainly on indigenous organizations. They are the ones who are really watching so that these violations do not happen. They are monitoring the surroundings of the reserve. They are documenting the entrance of loggers.
Although Peru has a framework that recognizes the existence of peoples in isolation, as well as their rights, in practice, the implementation of these laws is very weak, according to the indigenous people themselves, who have been promoting the protections of their lands.
The regional organizations, the federations, the communities, they collaborate on how to protect spaces, not only of specific spaces within indigenous territorial reserves, but also for all those places where the people live in an ancestral way and in isolation.
In January 2019, Amazonian leaders plan to propose that regional and central governments guarantee the protection of people living in isolation and their fundamental right to life.
The government of Venezuela has delivered 2,500,000 homes as part of the Great Housing Mission for Venezuela, a special program that has benefited almost 10 million citizens since 2011. President Nicolás Maduro celebrated this milestone in Tuina, a neighborhood in Caracas. The president assured he will fulfill the late commander Hugo Chávez's goal of delivering 3 million homes by 2019.
We have continued to advance with the Great Housing Mission for Venezuela. We have managed to deliver 2.5 million homes. When Commander Chávez first founded this great mission, he set a goal for 2 million houses, but later he said no, it will be 3 million houses. And we will get there, Commander Chávez. Wherever you are, wherever your immortal strength is, we will deliver 3 million houses. And then we will reach 5 million houses for the people.
And after abstaining from the vote on campesino rights at the United Nations, Colombian President Iván Duque has once again failed to uphold his campaign promise to protect campesinos. Let's find out more.
According to Congressman César Pachón, it is regrettable that the Colombian government did not support the rights of campesinos in the United Nations, leaving them in the middle of an armed conflict that sees no end.
The government of President Iván Duque feeds the war. It feeds the war with the use of glyphosate. It feeds the war by not supporting campesino rights. It feeds the war by not supporting agrarian programs, by not doing any of this, but instead bringing food from other countries to affect the campesino economy.
Colombia is in the first place among 15 Latin American countries in matters of inequality, in particular over land distribution. In the country, 1% of large-sized farms control 80% of the land.
I think that there is fear. There is fear from the establishment that campesinos can have a greater strength and can also have a voice for specific matters that are important in the territories. But this also has to do with the democratization of land. Colombia is in debt in the framework of the peace agreements and needs to implement comprehensive rural reform.
The government insists in reducing campesino rights, like how to decide what type of development they want in their territory.
This shows us that they are convinced that common goods, minerals, everything that is found in campesino lands, that even though we have lived there, we have conquered it, we have colonized it, they still think that they own these resources and they can do whatever they want and giving them to the transnationals as they have done.
Campesino organizations assure that mobilization will be the response to this government in order to protect their lives and their rights.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Guyana's government is preparing to respond to a vote of no confidence, which toppled the ruling coalition and may force a general election. It will be presented with a report outlining all legal options on Thursday. A special cabinet subcommittee has been appointed to advise on this matter. Government MP Sharon Das Persod voted in support of the opposition's no confidence motion. The Constitution allows for the motion to pass if there is a majority, but it does not define majority. One prominent attorney has argued that majority means 34 out of 65 seats in the National Assembly. Guyana's Bar Council has, however, rejected this notion, saying the vote is in fact valid. The vote was passed 33-32.
Ms. Manichand?
Yes.
Mr. Nanlau?
And the Caribbean has lost one of its distinguished legal luminaries. Sir Fenton Ramasoy has passed away. The Queen's Counsel and former Attorney General of Guyana died in Barbados of natural causes. He was 89. Sir Fenton was born in Guyana but enjoyed a legal career throughout the Caribbean that spanned 6 decades. He holds the record among attorneys in the English-speaking Caribbean as having made the most appearances in the Judicial Committee of the London-based Privy Council. He was also at the forefront of the independence movement in Guyana.
Expenditure of monies from the consolidated and other public funds.
The Christmas season is being celebrated with a unique blend of carnival festivities in the Caribbean island of St. Kitts and Nevis. It's Kittians' biggest event of the year, also known as Sugar Mass. Traditional mass characters fill the streets during Jove celebrations. The spectacle of Sugar Mass Carnival takes over the island each year between Christmas and New Year's. At least 8 people were killed and more than 2 dozen were injured when a bus plunged down a ravine from a Peruvian highway. Peruvian media reported that the bus was carrying around 55 passengers and was heading to the capital, Lima. Emergency response teams arrived to the scene to pull bodies from the vehicle and rush survivors to a nearby hospital. Indigenous leader Milagro Sala has been acquitted in a case in which she was accused of attempted murder. Prosecutors in Argentina had initially requested she be sentenced to 12 years in prison. Sala, who has been referred to as President Mauricio Macri's political prisoner, was accused of hiring someone to kill another social leader in the province of Jujuy. But the court agreed that there was no evidence linking Sala to the case. Sala has been detained since 2016 on a number of charges, including fraud and embezzlement. She denies all charges and has accused President Macri of persecuting her. And Milagro Sala said her acquittal provides a glimmer of hope and insisted that she's being politically persecuted.
Today I was acquitted in the shooting case, one of the many lawsuits I have been involved in. Various judges wanted to pressure me with various lawsuits, but today it was proven that everything that I am going through is political and judicial persecution. It has been demonstrated that I had nothing to do in this case and that I insist this is political persecution. I want to thank you, and this is a glimmer of hope that we can still believe in justice. Thank you.
For more on this case, we turn to our correspondent Sabrina Roth, who was at the court in Jujuy.
Milagro Sala had just been acquitted in the trial known as the Asopardo shooting. She has been detained since 2016 with not a single piece of evidence against her. The court finally decided to acquit her. Alberto Cardoso, another political prisoner from the province of Jujuy, who was in fact the victim of the attack in question, was also acquitted and his immediate release was ordered. Cardoso was in prison for 2 years and 9 months. He has long said he was tortured and extorted, so he would accuse Milagro Sala in exchange for his liberty. Fabian Avila, who was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the attempted murder, is also said to be released since he's been in detention for 4 years. This is one more case against Sala that has been destroyed. In fact, this is the 4th case brought against her. The Pibes Gieros case is still ongoing and the decision on this one will be known in mid-January.
We thank Sabrina for that report. Argentina's government has announced that 120,000 jobs were lost in 2018. According to the Labor Ministry, the commercial and construction sectors have been the most affected. Apart from these job losses, the minimum wage also dropped by nearly 11%, while the median salary dropped by 11.6%. This announcement comes on top of the new data that revealed over a third of the population is living under the poverty line. Women's issues have gained momentum in Argentina this year. Though a bill attempting to legalize abortion was defeated in August, the women are increasingly standing up publicly against sexual abuse, rape, and harassment. We are now joined live from Córdoba by Angélica Peñas de Fago. She's a social scientist and a member of the Catholics for the Right to Choose organization, which operates across Latin America. Thank you, Angélica, for joining us. First of all, could you please tell us about how the movement was born and the importance of the continental network it has grown into over the last 25 years?
Well, Católica year for free choice during the middle of the 90s in 1993 as the autonomous movement of people of faith. And currently as Catholic PDD, we have other partner organizations in other countries in Latin America like Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, and some members of association in Spain, also in Nicaragua, Mexico. And from our origins, We articulate with several civil movements and also theologies and religious movements who are based on theology of liberation and especially in the feminist theology. And this is our work in base of the relation into theological perspective, but also in political work that we do here in Argentina.
Angelica, what role does your organization play in the abortion campaign, and how does this fit in with the Catholic Church stance on abortion?
Well, CDD, Unidas por el Derecho a Decidir Argentina, is one of the funding organizations of a national campaign for the right to legal, free, and safe abortion in Argentina. From this origin, we try to contribute to the political work, doing advocacy with legislators in both levels. And the federal level, we are a federal state in Argentina, and we were in the province, not only in Córdoba, but also in Buenos Aires, and in the northwest of the country, in Salta, in Tucumán, in Catamarca. And this is important because there are the provinces where the worst rate of maternal health, maternal death because abortion, the illegal and in Argentina.
Now, in terms of dealing with women's issues, do you think a total separation of church and state is necessary in Argentina?
Yes, we support the demand for the separation between the state and the church. And we don't think as Catholics, as a Catholic person, this is a contradiction, but because in fact, we believe and we support the personal belief, but we are talking about the institutional rules, the institutional role of the state, regarding the relationship with some religions. And we support this separation because we really need in Latin America, and because the colonial heritage and the decades or maybe century of heritage of this political religious code that translate directly to civil and political policies, and this political alliance between the state and some churches affect directly the women and LGBT rights, person rights.
Angelica, we thank you so much for your time for Telesur. We have been speaking with Angelica Peñas de Fagos. She is a social activist and a member of the Catholics for the Right to Choose. Let's go to more news now. A recent survey has shown that 7 out of 10 Brazilians do not agree with President-elect Jair Bolsonaro's proximity and apparent submission to the United States. 66% of participants in the survey conducted by the Datafolha Institute also said that they do not believe that Brazil should give any privileges to the U.S. government. Meanwhile, 50% said they are in total agreement with Bolsonaro's foreign policies. And President-elect Jair Bolsonaro's swearing in is just days away. As such, left-wing governors are expected to be the primary forces to oppose his far-right government.
Brazil is made up of 26 states on top of the country's federal district. Out of these, nearly 10 will be governed by left-wing leaders over the next 4 years. According to experts, in a federal system such as this South American nation, the biggest capacity of resistance against Jair Bolsonaro's policies will reside in the opposition's governors.
Bolsonaro's arrival will bring major issues. First of all, inside public policies, because there may be setbacks in social, human and working class rights, which will be very serious as he has no respect for those rights. This can be seen in the ministers that he has already appointed and chosen for the next year. Secondly, the speeches of hatred and violence which he gives every day and activate a series of triggers in society. These are the triggers of violence which legitimize violent practices against the LGBT population, against the black population, and against women.
The Brazilian left, which is primarily in the northeast of the region, is proposing to confront the educational program of Bolsonaro. The program includes includes a law to ban certain political activity in schools. Brazil's left also seeks the autonomy of indigenous peoples, the protection of their culture and their way of life.
Prospects for the new period is bleak, as it is a government that has no relations with the country. The truth is, he was elected based on lies and without political and management experience. He will take Brazil into a disastrous direction. The way out is popular mobilization. The people are prepared to defend their rights, national sovereignty, the guarantee of their rights of freedom and expression, and democracy as a whole. Right now, we're going to fight for Lula's freedom and for the guarantee of compliance with the federal constitution.
Beginning on the first day of 2019, Brazil will have a military return to power, resurrected by the popular vote and bolstered by the main cabinets and ministries. For some analysts, this situation revives the Cold War, the anti-communist paranoia.
1 month after the murder of a Mapuche man in Chile, a 48-hour-long protest has been called for by community leaders. 24-year-old Camilo Catrillanca was killed by special forces deployed on Mapuche lands. Earlier this month, Chile's top police chief was dismissed following the release of a video footage that shows the shooting. The video contradicted the official version of events, outraging the indigenous community. Our correspondent in Santiago, Tiare Valenzuela, has more.
This 48-hour mobilization is based on three main demands: the demilitarization of Mapuche lands, the return of their lands, and the creation of a special commission for the self-determination of the Mapuche people. These protests come on the heels of the murder of Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca on November 14th. Mapuche leaders have already arrived in Santiago with a letter meant for President Sebastián Piñera, in which they ask him to take the responsibility of Catrillanca's murder and to comply with the compromises made over the past few weeks.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Indonesia has raised the alert level for the erupting Anak Krakatau volcano and ordered all flights to stay clear days after it triggered a tsunami that killed at least 430 people. The volcano has been particularly active since Sunday, December 23rd, spewing lava and rocks and sending giant clouds to ash up to 3,000 meters into the sky. The National Geological Agency raised the alert level to the second highest, which establishes an exclusion zone of 5 kilometers around the island. The Civil Aviation Authority said no airport would be affected. This year, Indonesia has suffered the highest annual death toll from disasters in over a decade. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has ordered their European Union ambassador to leave the country within 48 hours. The foreign minister's order comes after the EU prolonged sanctions against Congo's ruling party's presidential candidate, Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary. Earlier this month, the EU froze his assets and ordered a travel ban against him. The U.S. first sanctioned Shadary last year for hampering the electoral process and cracking down on protesters angry over the long-delayed election. The United Arab Emirates has reopened its embassy in Damascus 8 years after it was closed when the Syrian conflict began in 2011. The UAE said that the decision aimed to improve ties with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and curb risk of regional interference in Arab and Syrian affairs. The UAE was once one of the states in the region that backed armed groups opposed to President Assad. Not many plants and animals can adapt to harsh conditions in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan, but this unforgiving environment is an ideal home to the hardy yak. At 3,500 meters above sea level, yak herders use almost every bit of the animal for survival. The meat, their milk, and even the animal's manure is burned as a fuel for cooking and heat. Herders are mostly employed by a private agricultural firm that owns and sells the yaks. Kyrgyzstan is one of the poorest post-Soviet nations and has one of the highest rates of unemployment. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news for Peace and Other Stories. As always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.